Welcome to the modern elite. There is a specific kind of test that some people run, not consciously, not with malice, not with a clearly articulated intention, but a test nonetheless. The test of replacement, the move that says through action rather than words, let me see what you are made of. Let me see whether the version of yourself you have been presenting is the real version, or whether under sufficient pressure, the real version reveals itself to be smaller and more desperate than the presented one. She replaced you, and the test was embedded in the replacement. What she was watching for, consciously or not, was whether the replacement would produce the reach, the plea, the anxiety-driven pursuit that would tell her everything she needed to know about where your worth was living. You walked away, and in walking away, you passed a test she may not have even known she was administering. Like and subscribe to Stoic Blessing. We show up every week for the man doing the hard work. Let's get into it. The first thing to understand is the psychology of the replacement test, because understanding it clearly is what prevents you from either dismissing it cynically or reading more into it than it actually contains. The replacement test is not a calculated manipulation deployed by someone who has consciously decided to assess your worth through a controlled experiment. It is almost always the product of an unconscious pattern. The specific, deeply wired human tendency to test the security of an attachment by creating conditions that would reveal whether the attachment is genuine or merely convenient. People who have experienced insecure attachment in their formative years often test the security of adult relationships without awareness that the testing is happening. They create the conditions for abandonment to see whether the abandonment produces pursuit or acceptance. The replacement is one version of this test, and the man who chases when it is administered confirms the specific fear the test was designed to reveal, that his presence was conditional on her continued choosing of him. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of understanding the nature of the people and situations you encounter. Not to judge them harshly, but to engage with them accurately rather than with the distorted picture that either idealization or resentment produces. The woman who replaced you to test your worth was not operating from a place of cruelty. She was operating from a place of unresolved questions about whether genuine security was available. The test was her way of asking a question she did not know how to ask directly, and your walking away was the most honest and most complete answer that question could have received. Not because it was designed to pass the test, but because it was the natural behavior of a man who had decided that his worth was not for testing in the first place. Comment below, my worth isn't up for testing. If you've decided that the men who stay when they're being tested aren't winning, they're just being graded. Here is what walking away actually communicated. Not what you intended it to communicate, not what you hoped it would communicate, but what it actually communicated at the level of behavior and pattern and the specific psychological language that tests like this are designed to read. Walking away communicated self-possession. It communicated that the replacement, however painful, did not destabilize you to the point of abandoning your own ground. It communicated that your continued presence in any connection is a genuine choice made from your own values and your own sense of what deserves your investment, rather than a compulsion driven by the fear of what happens if you withdraw it. It communicated in the specific and unmistakable language of behavior, rather than words, that you are a man who knows what he is worth and acts accordingly. That communication is not a strategy. It is not a calculated move designed to produce a specific response. It is simply the honest external expression of an internal reality. And honest external expressions of genuine internal realities are among the most compelling and most immediate communications available in human interaction. Epictetus taught about the difference between what is in your control and what is not, and about the specific liberation that comes from investing your energy exclusively in the first category. Walking away was the investment of your energy in what was genuinely within your control. Your own choices, your own direction, your own daily life and its ongoing development. What happened in her mind as a result of that walking away, whether it produced recognition, regret, reassessment, or nothing, was not within your control and was not the point of the walking away. The point was the walk itself, the specific, quiet, dignity-preserving act of a man who had decided that his presence was a gift rather than a guarantee, and who withdrew the gift when the conditions no longer warranted its giving. Comment below, my presence is a gift, not a guarantee, if walking away was the most honest thing you could have done with your self-respect. Now, the Stoic demand, the one that separates the man who genuinely passed the test from the man who merely performed passing it. You cannot walk away as a strategy. You cannot walk away while internally monitoring the situation for signs that the walking away is producing the desired response. You cannot walk away and then spend the subsequent days tracking her behavior for evidence that the walk registered in the way you hoped it would. That is not walking away. That is chasing with your feet moving in the opposite direction. The genuine walkaway is characterized by a specific internal quality that is entirely different from the strategic withdrawal. It is the quality of a man who has made a genuine decision about where his energy belongs and who has directed that energy accordingly, without ongoing investment in what the decision produces for her perception of him. Marcus Aurelius was relentless about this distinction. He wrote about acting from virtue, from the genuine internal values-based standard of what is right, rather than from the calculation of what acting from virtue would produce. The man who walks away because he has genuinely decided that his investment requires reciprocity to continue is acting from virtue. The man who walks away because he has calculated that walking away will produce the recognition he is hoping for is acting from strategy. These two men make the same external choice. They are in entirely different internal positions, and the internal position is the only one that actually passes the test, because the test was always about whether your self-worth is real or performed. Performed self-worth, however convincingly executed, eventually reveals itself. Real self-worth, built through the daily practice of genuine self-investment, does not require concealment. Comment below, I walked from values, not strategy. If the decision to leave came from who you are, not from what you were hoping it would produce, let's talk about what the test was actually looking for, because naming it precisely is part of what allows you to understand the full significance of what you're walking away communicated at its deepest level. The replacement test is not looking for indifference. It is not hoping to find a man who feels nothing, who is unmoved by the replacement, who processes the loss with robotic efficiency and immediate forward motion. That response would not pass the test. It would simply confirm a different fear, the fear that the connection was never genuine enough to be worth grieving. What the test is looking for, what it has always been looking for in the unconscious and inarticulate way that attachment tests always seek their answer, is the specific combination of genuine feeling and genuine self-possession. A man who can feel the full weight of the loss and still refuse to let that weight drive him toward behavior that abandons his own ground. A man who grieves without collapsing, who cares without clinging, who values the connection genuinely while valuing himself more genuinely still. Seneca wrote about this combination, genuine feeling alongside genuine self-possession, as the specific mark of the philosophical life lived fully rather than defended against. The Stoics were not advocates of emotional shutdown, they were advocates of emotional sophistication, the specific trained, genuinely lived capacity to feel everything and be governed by nothing. The man who walked away was not demonstrating that he did not care. He was demonstrating that he cared about himself enough to refuse the specific form of diminishment that chasing would have required. And that demonstration, however painful the internal reality behind it, however much grief it required him to carry without releasing it into the reach, is the most genuine and most complete answer to the question the test was asking. Comment below, I felt it and still chose myself. If walking away cost you something real and you did it anyway, here is what passing the test produces, not as the goal of passing it, but as the natural, honest, inevitable consequence of a man who is genuinely, functionally self-possessed, encountering a dynamic that was designed to reveal whether that self-possession was real. What it produces in the person who administered the test is the specific recognition that the man they were testing is not the kind of man who can be leveraged through the threat of his own replacement, that his worth is not organized around her continued choosing of him, that his presence when it was offered from genuine fullness rather than from the desperate need to be chosen. That recognition, however she processes it, whatever she does with it, is the honest correction of whatever misreading of your character led to the test being administered in the first place. It is reality doing what reality always does when it is given the space to operate, revealing what is actually there. But here is the Stoic insistence that this point requires. What it produces in her is not the point. What it produces in you is every test that you pass, every moment that your genuine self-possession is revealed to be real rather than performed. Every time you choose your own ground over the relief of the reach adds something to the foundation of your own self-knowledge, something specific, earned and permanent. The knowledge that you are who you decided to be, even when being that person costs you something real. That knowledge is not given to you by passing the test, it is built by passing it. And built knowledge verified through the actual lived experience of being tested and holding is the most unshakable form of self-respect available. Comment below. Passing that test built something in me. If walking away showed you something about yourself that nothing comfortable ever could, let's address what happens after the walk. The period that follows the passing of the test, which is where the real work and the real growth happen, regardless of what she does with what she discovered. The period after the walk is not a waiting period, it is a building period. And the distinction between those two things is the difference between a man who passes the test and then pauses for the results, and a man who passes the test and then turns fully toward his own life with the specific energized forward-moving quality of someone who has just demonstrated to himself that his ground is solid. The first man has passed the test but not yet integrated what passing it means. The second man has passed the test and immediately begun living from what it revealed about him. The Stoic asks you to be the second man. Epictetus taught that every demonstration of genuine self-possession is simultaneously a reminder and a foundation. A reminder of what you are capable of and a foundation for the next level of becoming. Walking away was not the destination, it was the proof that you were ready for the destination. And the destination, the specific daily, fully inhabited, genuinely self-possessed life that the Stoics were always pointing toward, is built in the period after the walk in the ordinary and unglamorous and genuinely demanding practice of investing in yourself with the same consistency and the same genuine care that you were previously investing in the connection. Your work, your body, your craft, your inner life, the daily practice of becoming more specifically and authentically yourself, that is the building that the walk made possible, and that building done genuinely and consistently is what makes the passing of the test not just a moment of dignity, but the beginning of a genuinely different life. Comment below. The walk was the beginning, not the end. If what happened after you walked away turned out to be more important than the walking itself, here is what to do if she comes back. Because the test, when passed genuinely, frequently produces exactly that. The man who passed the test by walking away, not as a strategy, but as a genuine expression of his own self-respect, does not respond to her return with the specific relief-soaked eagerness that would immediately reveal that the walk was a performance rather than a genuine decision. He engages warmly, honestly, from the grounded place that the walk and the building that followed it produced. And he brings the specific clarity of a man who now understands something about the dynamic that he may not have fully understood before. The specific, honest understanding that the test was administered, what it was testing for, and what would need to be genuinely different in the dynamic for re-engagement to be worth the investment of everything the building period produced. The question he asks, not defensively, not with accusation, but with the honest clarity of a man who respects himself and the other person equally, is whether what is being offered now reflects the genuine growth that the test and its outcome was supposed to produce, not a softer version of the previous dynamic. Not the previous dynamic reasserting itself under the cover of renewed warmth. Something that reflects the honest reckoning of a person who administered a test, received an answer they did not expect, and used that answer to examine their own patterns and their own readiness for the kind of connection that the answer revealed was possible. That reckoning, when it is genuine, is worth engaging with fully and openly. When it is absent, the walk was right the first time. Comment below. I re-enter on my terms or not at all. If you've decided that coming back only works if it's built on something real, the final thing, the one that pulls every thread of this video together into the single most important truth it has been building toward, she replaced you to test your worth. You walked away, and in walking away, not as a strategy, not as a performance, not as the calculated move of a man who had read about this situation and knew the correct response, but as the genuine, honest, values-driven behavior of a man who had decided that his worth was not for testing and his presence was not for chasing. You passed the test in the only way that actually counts, not by producing a specific response in her, by demonstrating a specific reality about yourself. To her, yes, but more importantly, because this is always more importantly to yourself, that demonstration, quiet, unglamorous, privately, and genuinely made in the specific and costly moment of choosing your own ground over the temporary relief of the reach, is not just the passing of her test, it is the building of your own foundation. The specific, tested, lived into, permanently yours knowledge that you are the man you decided to be, even when being that man requires you to walk away from something you genuinely wanted. That knowledge is the Stoic prize. It is the destination everything in this philosophy was always pointing toward, not the outcome of the test, the man the test revealed. Like and subscribe to Sound of Sadia Khan. Stay grounded, stay whole.